last bits of Yud Gimel Amid Beis. And the question was why they put these breads on the table. And we said either they were puzzle breads on the platform, either they were puzzle breads from the Toda or kosher breads from the Toda. Either way, they were breads that would not be able to be used anymore. So the fourth to last line, Tana Mishum Rabbi Elazar. It was taught in the Brisa in the name of Rabbi Elazar, Amru Keshera Sayu, that these breads were indeed kosher. As long as they were there, both of them. So then the people would continue eating their chametz. Nitla achas mehen toilin. When one of them were taken, then they would no longer eat. They would no longer eat, but they would. But they would feed their animals. So they wouldn't eat. But they wouldn't burn it yet. Not l'shteyan. Once both had been taken, hischilu kulan surfin. Then people would stop burning their chametz. Tanya Abba Shalom, or however Abba Shalom has a different teaching. He says that the scenario was something else. And now we're on 14a Yudalet Amid Aleph. Shtei paras hayichoshes b'hara mishcha. And in Har Hazesim, in Mount of Olives, they would have two cows that would be plowing on the mountain. Because as long as both of them were plowing, everybody would eat. Man, once one of them stopped, so then they were in between, no longer eating, but also wouldn't burn it. When they were both taken, they all began to burn the chametz. This completes the first section of the halachas of bedikas chametz. For the next 7 days, we're going to go into the concepts of tuma and what's known as the sugya of Rabbi Chanina Sgana Kahanim. The next Mishnah is going to teach us Rabbi Chanina Sgana Kahanim's teaching of a burning of various levels of prohibited foods, whether it's kachim or teruma, or and what's relevant to us, burning of chametz, which was a tama. And now we know that the halacha is the Torah forbids us from creating a tuma in something that's kadosh. You're not allowed to create tuma in kachim, something that belongs to the Beis Hamikdash, or teruma that belongs to the Kohen, or even maser. You're not allowed to make something tameh. And when you burn these together, you may make something from a lesser degree tuma to a higher degree tuma. That's the concept that's going on in this mission. So in order to understand this, I'll give a little bit of an introduction. I'm going to use Style of Daf's diagram to help us out. The levels of tuma are avi avos hatuma, the father of fathers, the primary, the most severe tuma, and that is a deceased person or any metal utensil. Rashi says any metal utensil that comes into contact with that deceased person. These would have the ultimate primary tuma, and they can make anything that comes into contact with them tuma. And a deceased body, and could be even this metal, would cause tuma ba'ohel. If they were in the same tent as something else, they would cause tuma to that. This is the concept of avi avos hatuma, or tumas mace, the tuma that comes from a deceased person, the primary source tuma. The next level, which is all other types of tuma, in its primary, avatuma, the father of tuma, the primary level of tuma, and that's a person that touched a dead body, or the dead rodent or sheretz itself, a dead animal, an avela, a zav, or a zava, somebody that had a bodily fluid that came out which caused them tuma, a metzora, someone has a leprosy, or again, a metal tuma that touches the avha tuma of a tumas mace, a metal vessel that came into contact with something that came into contact with a tumah. So these would also be a secondary tumah. So if a person touches a deceased person and then touches a metal vessel, that metal vessel is the same level as the av hatumah, the person who touched tumah. Okay. Next level is rishon l'tumah. And these are all people or utensils or food that touched an av hatumah. Anything that came into contact with an av hatumah will become a rishon l'tumah, a first level detachment from a tumah. Even though that in regards to dead person, this is a second degree detachment because, but that's the function of the deceased person being avi avos, a really primary source. The second level tumah really only applies to food and liquid. So that's a sheni l'tumah. Anything that came into contact with a first level tumah will be a second level tumah if it is food or liquid. But vessels do not get a secondary level tumah, meaning which secondary level mean really we would call that a third. Yeah, the primary, the second, and the third. But in halacha, it's the primary one away from there, and this is a second one away from there. Then in regards to kachim and teruma, meaning anything that pertains to service in the Beis Hamikdash, kachim, so a carbon, whether it's an animal carbon, a meal carbon, or anything dedicated to the mizbeach, these would have a tuma in a third level as well as teruma. If they came into contact with a sheni l'tuma, the level above, they would also become tomei only in kachim or teruma. Another is revi'i l'tuma, only kachim, only something that pertains to service in the Beis Hamikdash, a carbon or something that's hukdash l'mizbeach, dedicated to mizbeach. So too, these would also have this idea of a fourth level. So if they came into contact with the level above, they would also have tumah. These are the Torah level tumas. However, in the Gemara in Shabbos tells us that there are 18 things that the Chachamim enacted that should be a second level tumah, a sheni l'tumah, and these are yadayim, their hands, and various other things. These are in regards to teruma going to be a second level tumah. There's also a concept, a rabbinic concept, midrabanan, that the liquids will become a rishon l'tumah. A liquid, even in a lesser degree, will go up to be a first level, meaning one away from the primary in tumah. And this is midrabanan. The 7 liquids become a rishon l'tumah and turn tumah into and can therefore defile something else. Another important thing that we need to know is that that generally we say that tuma is the term used, tameh is the term used for something that not only itself becomes tameh, but it can then cause tuma to something else. And the term pasul, invalid, is the term for something that it itself became tameh, but cannot make anything else tameh. So if we take it to these levels here, since a human that became, or a vessel that became tameh in the first level does not make anything else tameh, right? Does not become tameh itself. So it can make other things tameh. So in regards to other vessels, it is tameh, a pasul, only invalid. In regards to food, it's tameh because it can make it tameh. A second level is pasul. It can, if it's not teruma, because it can only make itself. It only becomes tameh itself. It doesn't make anything else tameh. But in regards to teruma and kachim, there is another level. In regards to teruma, this level here in the green is only going to be a pasul, invalid, because it can't make the next level teruma tameh, but it can make kachim tameh. So that's the concept, that we use the term tameh for something that is itself defiled, tameh, and can make something else tameh, and the term pasul, invalid, when it would make when not it itself becomes invalid tameh, but not make something else tameh. So this is the introduction needed to begin the next Gemara. Rabbi Chanina Sagana Kohanim. Rabbi Chanina Omer, he would say, Rabbi Chanina, the deputy of the Kohanim, he was in charge at the Beis HaMikdash, he would say that Miyameim Shel Kohanim, in all the days of the Kohanim, L'nimnalu milisraf es habasar, they never held back from burning the meat, and the Gemara is going to explain why he uses the term the meat, shenitma, that became tameh, bivlad hatuma. Even though it became tameh, a vlad hatuma, meaning a child of tuma, meaning it wasn't the primary, but it came into contact with something else, and that come into contact with tuma. So this is already a third generation, or 2 steps away. So this would be a second level tuma. Basa shenitma bevlad hatuma, im basa shenitma ba'avatuma, together with something that came into contact with the avatuma, with the primary. So we never were concerned with burning them together, even though essentially what may happen is they're going to touch, and then something that's a higher level tuma, it's closer to the primary, is going to touch that which is further away and perhaps bring it up a level. So what? At this point, they're both tameh anyhow, and you're going to burn them anyhow. So it doesn't make a difference at this point if you're causing tuma to it, even at a higher level tuma than it already had. Even though you're adding tuma, a higher level tuma, to the tuma that was there. Hosef Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva added a concept here. And the Gemara is going to say, what is he adding? Va'amar, and he said, Miyameim shel Kohanim, in all the days of Kohanim, lo nimneu milahadlik es hashemen, they never held back from burning as fuel oil shenifsa b'tvul yom, that became invalid with a tvul yom. Now, nifsal means that it became tameh, as we said, it became invalid, meaning it itself is tameh, but can't make something else tameh, but it's a lowest level tuma. And yet, this is teruma, and it's going to be burnt together, bener, it's going to be burnt, and as we'll see later in the halacha, that the Gemara is going to explain, that with teruma, you're allowed to benefit from the burning and the consumption of this of the tameh, the invalid oil. So you have oil, which is teruma, a gift to the kohen, which is meant to be eaten, but since it's tameh, he may not eat it, so you can't put it in a salad. If it was kudshim, if it was something dedicated to the Beis HaMikdash, you're not allowed to benefit in its burning. But if teruma is, the kohen is allowed to benefit from it, and so he can put it into his candle and benefit from the burning. And so he's allowed to put it in, even to a ner shenitma b'tamei meis. And he can even put it into a candle, into a candelabra that became tamei from a primary source, a tamei meis, a deceased person. And that will bring the level of the tuma up more than it was beforehand. And yet he's allowed to do that. In the burning of the teruma oil, which he's doing in order to illuminate his home, he's allowed to put it into a tameh, a higher level tuma vessel. Even though he's bringing the tuma to a higher level. Amar Rabbi Meir, midavreim lamanu, and from this we learn, shesurfin teruma tahara imatamea bepesach. Similarly, since we have to, in our previous mission, we said that on the day before Pesach in the morning, you're going to have to burn chametz, even teruma, which is essentially edible, and it's not defiled, it's not tameh. And nevertheless, you have to burn it because it's going to be chametz. So what are you going to do? Nobody's going to eat it, so you're allowed to burn it. You can even burn it together with tuma, even with teruma that is already defiled. And now, up until now, we were saying that something that is a lesser degree tuma can be burned together with something that's a higher degree tuma, and because it's already tameh anyhow. And so what if it's becoming a higher degree of tuma in its process of being consumed? destroyed. But here he's taking one step further. He's saying, similarly, we can say that even non-defiled tahor, pure teruma, is allowed to be burned together with tamei teruma, even though you're causing its initial tuma. But since it has to be burnt anyhow, you're allowed to burn it on Erev Pesach. And the Gemara is going to challenge this and see, where do we learn this from? Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Yossi disagrees and says, no, this is not something we can learn from the previous teaching. The Gemara, the Mishnah further says, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Eliezer and Yeshua both agree, you can burn each one separately. So what's the machlokas about? Al hataluya v'al hatameya. If something is taluya, that means we don't know for sure whether it is tamei or not. V'al hatameya, or we know something is for sure tamei. So you have these two. One is potentially tamei. One is for sure tamei. That Rabbi Eliezer says they have to be burned separately. The Rabbi Yeshua says you may burn them together. Even though that one can cause tumah to the other potentially, if one is not really tamei. And all this will be explained to a great degree in the Gemara. So Mechti. So the Gemara now is going to challenge to try and understand what is this great teaching, this chiddush, this new idea that that Rabbi Chanina is kind of saying. So let's see. Mechti. Basa shenitma bevlada tumah. What is a vlada tumah? That means that you have meat in this orange color here. That's a second degree away from the tumah that came into contact with a rishon l'tumah. Right? So it itself came into contact with a rishon l'tumah, which had in turn come into contact, or prior to that, come into contact with a primary tumah. So my have sheni l'tumah. So this is a second degree tumah. And what are you burning it with? You told me you're burning it with something that came into contact with tumah. That means that it's in the same level as before. So, when you burn this orange level, this sheni l'tumah, together with something in the purple level, which is the rishon l'tumah, the first step away from the primary, well, so what? That's already what happened before. This is a second degree away, and you're burning it together with something that it already came into contact with. So it's not becoming more tamei. It's the same level that it was. Meaning, on Sunday, this piece of meat touched a piece of meat that touched a primary tumah. And now when you're burning it, it's touching a piece of meat that touched a primary tumah. So that's exactly what happened before, and no additional tumah is happening to it. My hava sheni, it's a second degree away. Sheni v'sheni. So that it was a second degree before, it's a second degree now. My moisif loy tuma al tamasa yika. What kind of additional tuma is happening that you're saying, hey, he's adding tuma? Amar Rav Yehuda, so Rav Yehuda said no. We're making a mistake. Hacha bevlad uvlad askina. Dahava leishlishi. Here we're talking about that it's actually not it's the green level. It's a shlishi. It originally was a third level tuma because it had come into contact with something that had come into contact with something that was tamei. Meaning it was a vlad, a child of a child, a degree away from something that was a degree away. That's what it came into contact. So this is a 3-step away from the primary. And now you're burning it together with something that was a 1 step away from the primary, and you're bringing it up from a shlishi, which is this green level here, up to the sheni, which is the orange level here. And Rabbi Chanina is saying that you're allowed to take something that's already tamei, even though it's a 3rd degree tumah, which is a lesser degree tumah that only applies to kachim and teruma. Nevertheless, I'm allowed to bring it up to the level of tumah of a secondary tumah, meaning it comes into contact with that which touched the primary. In this case, you bring it up to that level while you're burning it, and that's going to be okay. So now the Gemara is going to challenge this and says, okay, We don't. The truth is that food does not make food tummy. So even if they touch each other, nothing's going to happen. You need a liquid medium to create that tumah. The Tanya, as we learned, perhaps I would think that food that became tummy can make another food tummy. It says in the Torah, if water shall be placed intentionally or made come onto seeds, onto grains, and then a sheretz comes upon it, tameh, it is tameh. Tameh who? Who tameh? The food itself becomes tameh. Ve'ein osek yotzei tameh. But the fact that the Torah says tameh who, this becomes tameh. This becomes tameh, and it doesn't make other grains, other food tameh. So Gemara says, and this would be fine. So we don't have a question according to Abaye, because Abaye says that actually that's only true in regards to mundane things. However, in regards to teruma and kachim, their food can make other food tameh. So then over here we'd be talking about food, and it makes sense that this would be a problem to that it's making it a higher degree tumah, and yet Rabbi Chanina Skanakanim says it's permissible, as well as and even according to Rabbi Adar Bar Ava, who he had said in the name of Rava, also it would not be a problem. Why? Because he said Lashano ela chulin or teruma, because he says only chulin, mundane food, or teruma, tithe food that you give to a kohen, those food cannot make food tummy. However, aval bekachim, but in regards to meat from a korban or the meal offering of a korban or anything like kachim, then it does have the rule that food can make food tummy. So too over here in Rabbi Chanina's Kana Kahana, we make sense. It's talking about meat in the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, it makes sense that he needs to tell us that you're causing a higher level of tumah by burning the two pieces of meat together, and nevertheless you're allowed to do it. Kachim does cause tumah, so therefore shapir. So it makes sense that we need to teach us. However, but according to Ravina in the name of Rava, who says that this whole concept of food not making other food tameh is not only in mundane foods, and not only in teruma, but even in kachim, food does not make food tameh. Period. That's what Ravina says in the name of Rava. Well, if that's the case, so why in our Mishnah does he say, Rabbi Chanina Skanakanim say, oh, you can't burn teruma, you can't burn the meat that became tameh with the third level together with the meat that became tameh in a first level, and that's going to make it a higher level tumah. It actually won't, because food doesn't make food tameh. And how does he know this? The Amar Mikra Mali Diber. He says because the Torah is specific. It's a full pasuk. And when it says that food does not make food tameh, only the primary food that the sheretz touched, that this rodent touched, that's what becomes tameh, and it can't make other food tameh. And the Torah does not make a distinction. Lush not teruma, not chulin, not teruma, but lush no kachim, and also kachim not. So in any case, it cannot cause tumah from one food to another. So if that's the case, so why did Rabbi Chanina have to tell us that you can burn these two together? Of course you can, because even if they touch, nothing is going to happen. Food doesn't cause food tumah. So why did he have to say this? What are you going to say? So Gemara says, no, there's actually some liquid on the meat. The meat's not completely patted dry. It has juices oozing out of it. It has some liquid with it, and that liquid would then touch the other piece of meat, and it would cause it tumah together. The kamitame machmas mashkin, and the meat is going to become tameh. The lower level tumah that you're burning together with the higher level tumah is actually going to become tameh at a higher level because it has liquid together with it. Why did our Mishnah say that you're burning it together with meat? It should say you're burning it together with meat and liquid, because that's the primary idea, that the liquid is what's causing the tumah. Ella, so he says, he says, you're right. That's not true. Really, we're talking about just meat. And even though Rava, according to Ravina, would say that food does not cause tumah to food, that's on a Torah level tumah. But rabbinically, it does cause tumah. Food can cause another food tumah. And if you have a third level tumah by teruma or kachim, in an our Mishnah kachim, that can still, food can make it a second level tumah. And therefore, if a food came into contact with a primary source of tumah, and now you're burning it together with this piece of meat, that is a third level tumah, as kachim, now it's going to jump up and become a second level tumah. And you would think you're not allowed to. And even though that food cannot make food tumah on a Torah level, but rabbinically it can, nevertheless, you're allowed to burn it together, as Rabbi Chanina Skanakam has said, because you're in the midst of burning it. It does rabbinically cause it to. So that's the first section. Just to review, in our Mishnah we said that a primary, a first level tumah, meaning something that came into contact with a primary tumah, is allowed to be burnt with something far off, which the Gemara explained means a third level tumah. That means something came into contact with the primary, and that thing came into contact with something else, and that thing came into contact with this kachim, with this piece of sanctified meat, and now I'm going to burn them together, which essentially will make the third level up to a second level, and yet you're allowed to do it, even though really food does not make food tumah on a Torah level. Rabbinically, it does. Rabbi Akiva adds another teaching, and he says that they would burn oil that needed to be burned in a candelabra that was tamei. So mechti. So let's analyze this as well. What do we have here? We have shemen shenifsa b'tfulyon. We have the oil that became tamei by somebody at tvulyom. Tvulyom is a very unique idea. Somebody was tamei and already went to the mikvah. However, the halacha is that a tvulyom also requires, besides for going to the mikvah, they have to wait till the evening until the sun sets. And only then do they complete their tahara process. And if they come into contact during that day, they come into contact with a kachim or teruma, they will make that a shlishi latuma, a third level tuma, which cannot make something else tamei, but it itself is invalid. So now the kohen may not eat it. The kohen may not eat it even though it's teruma. So he has to burn it. And he's allowed to benefit when he burns this. And so he's going to put it into candelabra. But what level tumah are we talking about? We're talking about, like in the previous halacha, that it is a third level tumah, shlishi tumah, which is the green over here. And now he is lighting it in a candelabra that became tamei by someone who was tamei meis. That means somebody came, was in the Chevra Kadisha, helped with the burial of someone. So they came into contact with the Avi Avos. They themselves are a primary tumah. So what's the candelabra? The candelabra is going to be a 1 degree away from that. It's going to be a rishon tumah, this pink over here. That's exactly the previous case. We had a piece of meat that was that was 1 step away from the primary arishon, and we had a piece of meat that was a shlishi in the green. And when they are burnt together, this is going to go up 1 level from the green to the orange, from a shlishi to a sheni. Well, then that's exactly the previous halacha. What's Rabbi Akiva adding? Sheni. It's a 2nd degree tumah. So what? Maika mashmalan. What teaching is Rabbi Akiva adding? Shlishi mutar la'asos sheni? Is he telling us that a third level tumah, while burning it, is allowed to be made into a second level tumah? Hainohach. That's what we already learned before. That's exactly the same teaching of Rabbi Hanina, Sagana Kahanim. So what's Rabbi Akiva adding? Oh, and the same can be done in oil in a candelabra. Yeah, the concept's the same. You can move a third level tumah shalishi into a second. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, hacha ben ner shematechas askina. So we're talking about a metal candelabra. The Rachmana Amar, and here's the concept that we talked about before, this concept of halal harehu kecherev. We turn to Yudalet Amud base 14b. B'halal cherev, the Torah says that there's a deceased person, which would be sufficient to just say halal. Yet it says the one who's deceased by sword. The one who's deceased by sword tells us halal cherev. Halal cherev, meaning that the deceased person and the sword that killed the deceased person are all the same level. They become the same level. And this halacha is by extension tells us all metal objects, according to Rashi, all metal objects that come into contact with the deceased itself have the halacha of the deceased. And if it comes into contact with someone who was in contact with the deceased, it's as if they themselves are that level. Meaning, if we look at the purple up here, a dead body is the aviavos or a metal utensil that touched a dead body. They're going to be the same level. Similarly, we have as an avhatuma a person who touched a dead body, or a metal utensil that touches an avhatuma through tummy mace, that touches someone who came into contact with a dead body. Both of those are going to be not one step removed, but the same level as what they touched. So a metal touches a deceased person, it's as if it is a deceased person. And a metal touches someone who was in contact with a deceased person, is as if they itself are that same level. Oh, so now Rabbi Akiva is telling us something new. Because what Rabbi Akiva is saying is that this green, the shlishi, the third level, the oil, that is a third level tuma, because a tavul yom, somebody who went to the mikveh that day, but the sun hadn't set yet, touched it, makes it a shalishi, will not only go up to be a sheni, but when you put it into the candelabra, which is on this level, the avatuma, it'll become itself a rishon, it'll become the pink level. So now you're pushing it up from the green, the shlishi, not only to sheni, what Rabbi Hanina Skanaganim was saying, but even to a rishon, and that would also be permissible. That's the chiddush Rabbi Akiva is telling us. So the Gemara says on 14b, Yudalet Amud base, b'chalal cherev, the Torah says in the sword that killed a person, cherev arei k'chalal, that the sword, meaning metal utensils, are the same level as what it touched. V'havya le'av hatuma. So since this piece of metal touched someone, or this candelabra was handled by someone who themselves came into contact with a deceased person, so now the candelabra itself, the ner, also is an avatuma. That's the highest level of a general tuma. And then now this third level tuma is not only going to become a second level, it's going to become a first level, one step away from the primary, and that's going to be permissible. While burning, consuming it. So Gemara says, what's pushing the Gemara to Rabbi Yehuda to explain our Mishnah that the candelabra that's being used is a metal one? Why don't you say it's an earthenware one, and then we don't have to come on to this? And then what did Rabbi Akiva add? Well, then we were stuck with a problem. What additional prohibition, what additional tuma is he adding that Rabbi Akiva needed to tell us? Well, he's adding a new thing. When this is what we mentioned earlier, that there's a concept that even there's a concept that even something that becomes tamei doesn't qualify as tamei itself, as tamei, unless it is tamei and can make something else tamei. So it is tuma that has the power to do something else. And so the candelabra has the ability to cause tumah to something else, whereas the oil is itself tummy, but does not cause anything else tummy, tumah. And so maybe that's all Rabbi Akiva is saying, that even though that the oil itself cannot make anything else tummy, but the candelabra is tummy and can make other things tummy, never, and it brings the level of tumah up in the oil by making it able to make other things tummy, and yet that's permissible. Amarava, so Rava said, yes, that could have been the meaning of the Mishnah, but it isn't on account of a different reason. Masnisin kashise, the words of the Mishnah itself were problematic, were difficult. My area de tani ner shenitma betami mes. Why did Rabbi Akiva specifically tell us that it was a candelabra that had come into contact with a deceased person? If we're on the level of a primary tumah, there are many other tumas as well, such as sheretz, a dead rodent, or one of the other shrutzim, right? Or a zav. Why did he mention that it came into contact with someone who came into contact with a deceased person? Why mention that? That's not relevant. Nisni shanitma b'sheretz, that came into tamei with the sheretz, or say just a primary source tumah. Ella eze davar shechaluka tumasei ben tumas meis l'sheretz. So what distinction is there between the deceased person's tumah and a sheretz's tumah? Only this concept, that a metal utensil that touches a dead body becomes the same level tumah as the dead body, and that a metal utensil that touches someone who touched a dead body becomes the same level as that person that touched the dead body. So therefore, that's what the Mishnah must be talking about, a metal utensil, because that's the only distinction there is between all these tumas in Hava Tumah. And must be that it's talking about a ner, a candelabra that came into contact with a person who was tameh, and from touching a deceased person. So the candelabra becomes the same level as that person, and it must be a metal candelabra. Therefore, it must be talking about metal, because that's the only distinction, and why Rabbi Akiva would have specified somebody that came into contact, a ner, a candelabra, that came into contact with someone who was tamei meis, who had come into contact with a tumah, with a deceased person. Amar Rava, Shmamina Kasav Rabbi Akiva. And from here, Rava says we can learn in the name of Rabbi Akiva, Tumas Mashkin Latame Acherin Daraisa. We can learn that from the fact that Rabbi Akiva says, "Oh, I can add something here," right? And we can see that liquids are tameh that can make other things tameh on a Torah level. Not like we'll learn later that there is an opinion that says that mashkin, that liquids, and oil over here would be a liquid, cannot make food tameh, cannot make something else tameh on a Torah level. It's only rabbinic that liquids would cause a tumah. And why does it have to be that that's the case in our Mishnah? Because if so, what did Rabbi Akiva add? If we're talking about a rabbinic tumah, then what did Rabbi Akiva add? That a third level tumah of oil can become a first level tumah by putting it into a candelabra that itself is a primary. What difference does it make? After all, the oil cannot cause tumah to anything else anyhow. So it itself is tummy already, and it can't cause anything else tumah. So what distinction is there between a third level tumah and a first level tumah? Third level tumah cannot make anything else tummy. Well, this first level tumah also can't, because it's a liquid that can't make anything else tummy. Must be Rabbi Akiva holds that a first level tumah of liquid can cause tumah, and that's why this is more severe, because you're turning something from a third level, meaning it cannot make anything else tummy, into a first level tumah, which can make other things tummy. So Rabbi Akiva says, Shmamina Rava says, Kasavar Rabbi Akiva tumas mashkin l'tamei acherin daraisa. On a Torah level, it must cause tumah to other things as well. The Isa Kadaitach Rabbanan, because if you think it's rabbinic, mechti. Let's analyze. Hi ner, Maika Mahanya, Lahai Shemen. In what way does the candelabra, which is a primary source of tuma, avatuma, caused the oil to become a first level. In regards to what is that more severe? Ilaf silu gufei, if to make the oil itself invalid, it's already invalid. Okay, it's already established to be invalid oil teruma because psul yom touched it, and so therefore must be that it is more severe in as much as that it can make other things tamei. So Gemara says, "Mimai, how do you know that?" Dilma l'tamei acher midrabanan. Perhaps to make something else tamei is rabbinic. Either the Rabbanan, if you tell us that it's the Rabbanan, my area ba'avatuma afilu b'risha v'sheni nami techila haba, and if you tell me the Rabbanan, well, as we mentioned earlier, and in the introduction, the halacha is that all oils, all liquids, when they become tamei, whatever level tuma they are, rabbinically they become midrabanan, they become a first level tuma. Well, then, if we're talking about the Rabbanan, that this candelabra is making the oil rabbinically a first level, and that therefore now it can make other things tamei as a first level. Well, all liquids are going to be rabbinically a first level. Every level, first level tuma, second level tuma, is going to be a first level tuma. That's the halacha. The Tanan, as we learned, anything that causes teruma to be invalid is going to cause the liquid to become a first level tuma. Chutz mitavul yom. Besides, for the one type of tuma that came into contact with the tavul yom will not become a first level. But over here, this liquid, which is coming in contact with a candelabra that's tamei, regardless of what it is, it's always going to be rabbinically a first level. So if Rabbi Akiva is telling us that there was a problem here that would have been a problem, but he's not, must be that on a Torah level, it's becoming a first level tuma. And that means that on a Torah level, it can cause other things to become tamei, and yet you're allowed to do that and burn it together while the Kohen is allowed to benefit from the consumption of, from the destruction of the teruma that became tamei. Teruma, which typically he would eat, now that it became tamei, he may not eat it, but he's allowed to benefit from its destruction while it's being destroyed, meaning burning it as fuel. He can benefit from it as a candle. So he puts it into his candelabra, which in itself is a primary source tuma, and which would cause the oil to become a first level tuma. And that's more severe than it was before, because up until now, it was a third level, meaning it itself is invalid, but can't cause other things tamei to become tamei. And now that it becomes a first level, it can cause other things to become tamei. And yet you're allowed to burn it in that candelabra as it's being destroyed, because it's already tamei, and he's destroying it. That's allowed to be done, and he's allowed to benefit during its consumption as well. And this would be a Torah normally the oils could cause other things a Torah tuma, and yet that's permissible. So that's the end of the first daf of Rabbi Chanina's Kana Kahanim. To review, Rabbi Chanina says a meat that is a third level tuma is allowed to be burned together with a meat that's a first level tuma, even though that the third level will become a second level by contact, either direct contact or through a liquid medium. Either way, it's going to become a second level tuma. And Rabbi Akiva adds to that teruma, which the Kohen is allowed to benefit when burning. And so he's going to take it and put it into a metal candelabra. And the metal candelabra, which is the same level as the person that touched it, meaning the candelabra is going to be a primary level tuma, one higher than what Rabbi Chanina's Skanak Adam was talking about. And nevertheless, you can put the oil in there and burn it in that candelabra, bringing the oil up from a third level, not only to a second, but even to a first level. And that's permissible according to Rabbi Akiva in our Mishnah.